So season 2 of Tales from Beyond the Pale. I guess to start out with, tell me the feedback you got from the first go around, and how that kind of inspired and shaped the second set of shows.
Well, I think Glenn and I felt that we were very well appreciated. The tales, which were originally recorded in a studio, was an array of stories by mostly filmmakers, and we had also a writer of novels, and there was just a real enthusiasm for the way the sound was so detailed and rich, and the whole season was very transporting, everything from the poster to the half-hour programs. And the host was kind of an entertainment as well, as he introduced and outroed the pieces. So we felt very encouraged. I mean, you never know with social media. It could be the same 3 guys up at night emailing you. No, we felt very loved. And it was nice that the box set, which was a physical release, was purchased quite liberally on Amazon and that sort of thing. So we feel we had a small core group of people that were excited about it, and we thought, let's do a second season. We were invited to do it live last October, and so that was really hard to refuse. It was a great way to step out of our comfort zone, step out of the studio, and try to see if we could capture the magic in a live setting. So that was the other reason we went forward with it. And once we had done them, we thought, well, gosh, we got to get them out. And so here we are.
Well, tell me about that live element. When you listen to these episodes compared to the first season, what does that live setting bring to it?
Well, I'll be honest, as one of the actors, what it brings is you only have one chance to get it right, and it can be a little spooky, and some of those little stammers and stutters are on tape there. But that kind of danger level is also exciting, and it makes it really feel immediate. And we occasionally allow the mics to pick up the audience, and it's fun to really feel like this was a one-time only performance, and now you get to savor it all over again. We did minimal sprucing up. A couple of the sound effects didn't get recorded properly when it was live. So we did go back in and tidy them up, but mostly you have a fairly immediate experience.
And it gives it a real, all live performance, it gives it a very special sense of energy, too, I think.
Oh, definitely. And I got to be honest, also, speaking as the host of the thing, you can tell that my performance as the guy introducing the episodes, it's considerably more broad than the intimacy that the studio brings. And I honestly, not necessarily for better, possibly for worse, but there you see the effect of being out in that room. You're really, you're reaching to the bleachers. Of course, it was a fairly small room, but, so it changed everything. And it's nice.
Yeah. But also, there's something magical about the old style radio plays, which you guys are emulating here. There's this kind of intangible quality where it forces the audience to kind of use their imagination in a way that films don't always achieve.
Well, I really agree. I think what has inspired Glenn and myself all along with this project is that we're stripping away the visuals. And, with modern films, especially we work in genre with horror, everything has become increasingly explicit, everything from the gore you're watching to even the creature design, because, of course, CGI, computer imagery, has allowed us to put every fantasy on screen. And if you strip that away, you remind the audience that it's their obligation to participate in the making of the images. And, of course, when you don't show it, when you only imply it with sound, the audience is building a picture, which is everyone's private nightmare, becomes the story. And that's why we have so much fun with it. Plus, it's considerably cheaper. And not to let cameras do it.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why I appreciate what you guys have done so much, because I think just like you've said, movies today, I mean, they do all the work for an audience. An audience isn't used to bringing themselves to the movie. I mean, kind of meeting it halfway. And the best films invite you to do that. And so this format that you guys have embraced here, I think, is so valuable in that way.
Oh, that's great to hear. And I guess we're repeating ourselves in our enthusiasm for this new thing. I completely agree. And I think audiences have to start working again because, we're in such a culture of dismissiveness and everybody's like, been there, done that. And I'd sort of like to say, well, what did you picture? Let's see what your monster looked like, or at least, I want you won't be quite as harsh a critic if you've done some of the work. Maybe you need to think about the journey that the story is taking you on, and so it's fun to remind people. Mind you, it's hardly like we're reinventing the wheel here. I think audio content is very popular now, with everybody having their own, vast library in their pocket. So it's a good time for these to come out. People love podcasts and this sort of thing.
Well, obviously, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely in the podcast business, so I mean, I can attest to that. But I also think, when you're dealing with an audio play, with a radio style play, it does feel so fresh because, I mean, we're inundated with the latest technologies and all of that kind of stuff. We're used to being able to see anything realized on the screen, but what's old feels new again. It's like go back to the basics, and it feels so fresh.
Well, I agree, and I feel that the entire mission at my little company called Glass Eye Picks is to sort of reinvigorate cliches and to, let's tell a vampire story over again. Let's do a ghost story. Let's have a campfire and tell some yarns around the flames. In other words, I'm sort of against the cynicism of that we've seen it all. I'd like to reawaken an appreciation for, as you say, just the most fundamental entertainment experiences. And in this case, we're speaking about audio dramas. We're speaking about, the story told around the fire. I was very influenced in my youth by one of my friend's moms. Would indeed. We'd sit around the fire when we'd drive to his upstate place, and she told the story of Dracula. I hate to admit it, but that's how I encountered the story, not by physically reading the book. And it was so potent that I was terrified and made an embarrassment of myself by, knocking on her door at night and saying, I'm scared. It was just so visceral. So I would love to bring some of that to the modern listener.
Yeah, and no matter what, I know that entertainment is about storytelling, and I mean this feels like a very pure form of storytelling. Tell me about your particular segment titled Caper. Well,
I confess that there's a lot of duties. Glenn and I both read all the other people's scripts, and we choose the stories we want, and then we try to shape them, and so there's a lot of editorial work. And I remember realizing that my day was coming, and it was a little bit scary to deal with that deadline. So I wrote it very intuitively, and I had the possibility to film in this giant mansion at one point, and so I had always percolated this story of some robbers going to this location and getting into a world of trouble because there's something wrong with the house. But with all my stories, it's about the psychology of the individuals. I always like to play with the horror tropes that we're familiar with, be it ghosts or vampires or werewolves or what have you, and then bring it back to the personal, as if the root of so much fear and horror stories is really our own self-betrayal. So these guys get inside this house, and they all have something that's haunting them. So that was the premise. And then, I always like to comment on what do we consider scary. It actually takes place at Halloween, so they're looking out the window, and they're all commenting on all the costumes, everything from Frankenstein to Freddy Krueger to the Scream monster. And they're saying what is scary, and of course in the end they end up in this mansion and they encounter real fears, which are really a mirror on their own guilt. So it's a fun little phantasmagorical piece.
Well, you said you wrote it intuitively, and just last week I was listening to an interview with a musician, and he said when he knows that he has a hit song when it just kind of channels through him. The ones that he has to really struggle with, he knows that the listening audience is probably going to hear that struggle, and it won't connect to them in the same way. Is screenwriting in any way similar to that?
I think it is. I mean, first of all, I make no pretense that this is a great piece. It's, I think, a serviceable, fun piece. I also wanted to have a radio play with as little dialogue as possible and see how far you can push the painting of the picture without visuals. But so that was another thing on my mind. As for the musician's comment, I mean, I love hearing that. I wish I had that kind of skill, even in my own songwriting and stuff. It's always sort of laborious. But I do believe. I mean, that my favorite quote from Bob Dylan is that all those early songs, he said, I don't know how I wrote them. They just came to me. You know, I couldn't possibly write songs that iconic anymore. He was speaking as a later in his career. So I think, there is this notion of divine inspiration. And when you let the material flow and you're actually just sort of trying to keep up with the image that's in your mind, that's the best screenwriting experience for sure. And of course you go back to refine, but when you're struggling with, the cliche with the cards and you're putting them on the wall and then you're moving the order around, that always feels like trouble to me.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, we've interviewed Vincent D'Onofrio a couple of times on this program, and the last time I talked to him was, I think, kind of last quarter of last year. I think I talked to him last, and he had just signed on to participate in this season of Tales from Beyond the Pale. So we talked about that for a little bit, and unbeknownst to me, I knew that he was an extremely popular actor and one of the great actors we have, but he has got such a large and vocal supportive fan base behind him, and a lot of them are on the Movie Geeks United bandwagon for us now too. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the experience of involving him in this project and what you gave him to do in this project.
Oh, well, thanks. That's so great. It's a real treasure when I encountered Vince because I was invited to help him look over a movie he had made because it was a horror venture. And so we sort of hooked up through that. And I couldn't resist, inviting him to do the previous season. And I had the pleasure to act with him in a show called Man on the Ledge. And that's a great tale of a guy out on the ledge, and I'm the detective talking him down. And we had a fun enough time that he came back to do this one live. And he really expressed a great deal of enthusiasm for the informality, just being among fellow artisans. And, of course, there's something pleasing, I think he felt, about the scale of it. You're really engaged for just 3 days. You do a rehearsal maybe, and then you get up there and you walk away having had a great evening and sort of shaped a character. Vince is really, he's very sweet. The two characters in the two different shows are very different. He's great in the one, The Ram King, where he plays a 16th century feudal lord, basically. And it's a really cool piece. It's actually by the same author who did the other radio play with Vince in it. And as you can see from that, they had a rapport as well. So it was fun because I get intimidated when you're with celebrities. But what's nice is we try to create an atmosphere where we're all artisans again. And I think, for some people who've been had their name in lights, it's kind of a relief to just get in there and just do the work and have some fun.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure that, you as a performer as well. I mean, you deal a lot with the business and the BS of it, but when you build a structure where you're just allowed to kind of have freedom and play, I mean, that's got to be incredibly liberating for a performer.
I think so, and you also have the script in front of you, so you're not even worried about the practicality of the lines and so on. You're really just indulging in the imaginative world that you're creating with your fellow players. And the funny thing about radio is that your relationship is not to the other actors, it's to the microphone and the world that the sound is creating. So while the usual advice from Chekhov on down is to look to your other actor, look in their eyes, react to them, and so on, in this case you're actually listening to their voice, and that's the rapport that you develop. So there's all these peculiarities to working in radio that I think make it a fun venture. And look, we're all New Yorkers. It was fun to just get together on October night, and the leaves skipping across the road as you head down to your dreary business of making spooky nights for the little audiences.
So tell my audience how they can get a hold of season 2.
Well, first of all, come visit talesfrombeyondthepale.com. Pale is spelled P-A-L-E, and there you'll see descriptions and nice posters. We make a big effort to have these wonderful posters that announce each episode, and so you can, like a kid from the old days, you can sort of peruse the artwork and sink into the show. And all the episodes are for download there. If that's too much effort, you can go to iTunes and use the card you have already registered, and it's on Amazon and Audible, so they're all over. And, if you enjoy any one of them, I can tell you that both seasons are just incredibly varied and wonderful. There's everything from aliens to ghosts to serial killers, but all very subtle and unexpected. Well, not all of them. Some of them are pretty ham-fisted. But there's some really deviant things on there. But I also like to say that they're quite literary. I mean, after all, we've spoken about sound effects and atmosphere, but there's also a celebration of the spoken word, because that's what's at play here,
Yeah. You're involved in so much. So, and I know that you must love every aspect of filmmaking, because you're embedded in all of it. I mean, you have your film that you directed, Beneath, that just came out. You're part of a Living Dead documentary. You're in the film You're Next. I have to tell you, by the way, I finally saw You're Next this past weekend, and it scared the bejesus out of my girlfriend. So thank you for that.
Don't worry, honey, I'll take care of you.
That's got to be a special treat. I mean, that movie has. I've heard from my friends nothing but praise about it. I loved it. It's a great, scary, fun picture. That's got to be a great treat to have that out there as well.
Oh, it is indeed. But listen, man, I'm not going to be like Johnny Depp and say I don't see my movies. But the fact is, I have not been able to get to it. And this weekend, I was alone in the city, and I was determined, but too many things came up, so I still haven't seen it.
You're too busy to even see the movie that you're in.
It's kind of true. I can't say I'm doing anything worthwhile, but I am doing it, so I'm very busy.
Well, I got to tell you, I appreciate everything that you do, and you're always a great conversation. I really appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jamie. Very fun to chat.